Tonight our featured speaker is Pete Bauman. How's that make you feel?
Pretty good.
That's good. I didn't really know what to say. I met Pete a few years ago, and he's always got some interesting stories to tell us about his hunting escapades and his growth in his faith. And he's always got a good joke or two. And so tonight, I think he's going to start out with a joke, so I'm just going to leave him go from here.
All right, I am going to start off with a joke. So I am, just to let you know, I do a lot of public speaking, a ton. I was talking with Tom Batta before, and I probably do 30 to 40 different things a year. Can everybody hear me okay? Turn it up. Like that? Is that better? Better, Dale? Yeah. Sorry to pick on you, Dale. Hey, if you need hearing aids, Kurt's over there. So, Kurt, can you hear? All right. At any rate, if everybody can hear me, okay. So I do a lot of this, but this is a lot different. This is a lot different thing to prepare for, and I just want to. Before I even get into my joke, I just really want to acknowledge the other speakers. 10 years of Truth on Tap. I have no idea what came over me when I told Missy that I would like to do this, because the minute I told her I'd like to do it, I'm like, I have nothing to talk about. And so I don't know, that was a year, maybe last year or something. So anyway, the other speakers ahead have been really phenomenal. They've been actually really good support. I can't even begin to thank them all or to acknowledge them all. Dave's told his story, Carrie already this year. Mike told a powerful story last year. Mike was really a good supporter. Mike actually told me to do this sober, but then Darren bought me a beers. I'm like, well, as long as we're going, we might as well have a few. So anyway, there's this cowboy and this atheist on a plane. And if you've heard this joke, just humor me. So I got this from my sister-in-law. I modified it a little bit. And they're sitting next to each other, and the atheist looks at the cowboy and he said, well, we got a long flight, what would you like to discuss? And the cowboy's like, I don't know. And the atheist goes, well, why don't we talk a little bit about how there is no God. When you die, you're just basically dust. There's no miracles, and there's really nothing other than just what we've got here on earth. And the cowboy's like, all right, we can talk about that, but before we do, can I ask you a question? And the atheist said, sure, shoot. He's like a Ivy League scholar, scientist, pretty full of himself. And the cowboy said, well, have you ever noticed when a deer takes a dump, it's just a little tiny pebble? And the atheist says, no, I guess I haven't. He said, but have you ever noticed an elk? Elk actually have a little bit bigger, about the size of a grape. I said, no, but he goes, but horses, when horses take a crap, it's like the size of an apple. And the atheist is like, I'm not familiar. And he said, and here's the funny thing, when a cow takes a dump, it kind of hits the ground and it just splats all over. And the atheist is kind of looking perplexed, and the cowboy goes, why do you suppose that is? And the atheist said, I really don't know. And the cowboy looks at him and said, so, we're supposed to sit here, I'm supposed to spend time with you talking about God, the afterlife, heaven, hell, when you don't know shit? So, anyway, that's my joke. Sorry for the children in the room. I'll be here all night, enjoy the meal. So I want to preface my talk with just that I've been very blessed in my life for many, many things. And the one thing that I count as a blessing that all of our other speakers have alluded to is some sort of personal tragedy. A lot of people that have spoke here have had personal challenges and personal tragedies. I'm not immune to that, but what's been blessed in my life personally is that the tragedies that I've had to deal with so far have not been immediate. They've not been that phone call in the middle of the night, that shock, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about this stuff tonight, but I feel blessed that God has always allowed me to prepare for the things that are coming, and maybe that's because I'm not strong enough to have it. Is that better? Sorry. Maybe it's because some people just aren't strong enough to have those things dumped on them. But a lot of you in this room, a lot of my close friends here, have had a lot of challenges, and sometimes those things get dumped on you. So far, I've been able to have things happen, but be prepared. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about miracles. I'm going to talk about miracles that surround people in my life. And I think it's important first that we acknowledge a few things. So creation is important. Creation and the created world, that's kind of like who I am. That's what I do. I've always been interested in that, career-wise, personal, whatever. But to understand miracles, I think that I was trying to think of this, there's two main points I think we really have to acknowledge. First is that God is real. If God wasn't real, none of the miracles in our lives would really make sense. They would be just chalked up to coincidences. But coincidences cannot explain the things that I'm going to share or the many, many, many things that other speakers have shared before me. But there are coincidences. People like to say there are no such thing as coincidences. I'm not really sure that that's true. Like, if the Vikings are winning a football game and I don't have to get out of my chair and Bridget brings me food, that's probably not a miracle. That's probably a coincidence. A good one, but it's a coincidence. I don't think those two things are really linked. But we know what miracles are. We know when coincidences are much more than coincidences, and I think that's what we're called to recognize. So a bit about my background. Okay, so this is important that people, and we actually had this conversation at our table. Okay, in the beginning, there was creation. And it was something to do with whether it's the Big Bang Theory. And I'm a scientist by training and stuff, so I really love this because all of this is brought to us, courtesy of the Catholic Church. But anyway, it happened, right? And this is what the universe more or less looks like today. But right here is Delano, Minnesota, the absolute center of the universe. That's where I grew up. That is a little town in Minnesota that is in the palm of God's hand. All right, everything stems from Bauman, Minnesota, and we have a big-ass chicken. But growing up in Delano, you can, like when I started dating Bridget, everywhere we met people from Delano. It is the center of the universe, and if you don't know someone from Delano, now you do. Now you're part of the group. I'm from Delano, Minnesota, and we grew up on a family farm, and a couple things just to set the background. Huge, big German Catholic family. My dad's with us here tonight. Hey, Dad's going to turn 80 in about a week and a half, so happy birthday. He said he didn't want a party, so I arranged this whole thing just to have a birthday party for my dad. So anyway, it's quite a family story, and I can't get into all of it, but I come from a family of 7 children, 4 brothers, 3 sisters. The numbers are a little fuzzy to me, but I think I have 86 first cousins. Ellen, right? 87, 86. My sister Ellen's with us here tonight as well. And the cool thing is my grandma died in 1992. That's 27 years ago. Her great-grandchildren are still being born, which is amazing. So there's like 300-ish second cousins, so it's pretty cool. So that's kind of the background of the things that, the how and where I grew up. A little bit about me, though. I do find God in creation. I find God outdoors. I've always found God outdoors. Ever since I was a little kid. I think my dad would, if he remembers. But I was always the one that was hounding him to do something outside, wanting to go fishing or hunting. We didn't get to do a lot of that, but I was always trying to, get him to donate corn to my pheasant projects or my wood duck projects or whatever I could to just do stuff outdoors and in conservation. So I find God in creation. I've always found God in creation. I spend a fair amount of time hunting. Bridget knows that. But it's not all wasted time. I do a lot of praying in my tree stand. And I learned this prayer, the Anima Christi. I've always was intrigued by this prayer. We would say it after communion. Bridget's the one that turned me on to this prayer. But about 2 years ago, I just decided that was going to be my quest for my archery hunting season. Fortunately, I hunted enough. It only took me a couple days. But, I learned this and memorized it. And I love this prayer, and I keep it with me on my phone. Anyway, that's where I find God. Now, before I get into miracles and everything, I really wanted, I'm not going to belabor this point more than what I'm going to show you right now, is that we have a an obligation to take care of our created world. We have an obligation to recognize God in our created world. We limit God when we say that creation happened. It's more appropriate to say creation is happening. Creation is happening all the time. And when we get our head around that, we don't have to, the debate over evolution and all that stuff really becomes pretty simple. Whoever said God stopped creating? And I really firmly believe that God does provide us answers to the very, very complex questions that we're faced with in society, politics, the world. I've lost, my family has lost several people to cancer. Specifically, a few to brain cancer. My godfather lost to brain cancer, never knew him. My grandfather on my mom's side. My aunt on my mom's side at 48 years old, I believe. And then a really close relative that was kind of a grandpa to me lost in the mid-1990s when I was in college, all the brain issues. So why am I telling you that? And why am I tying that back to creation? Take a look at this. This is a human brain. This little thing right here is a tumor. It is really, really, really difficult for doctors to find all of the tumor particles in a brain because the brain is so complex. But this is what they can do today over the last few years. And all of that red is tumor. And it shows up like a Christmas tree. Now, why do you care? You should care because that technology was not born in some lab, some concoction of petroleum or anything like that. That technology comes from a death stalker scorpion, something that people have been stepping on for 2,000 years in the Middle East. And this is only very recent. The venom from this scorpion, when injected into the human brain, makes cancer show up like a Christmas tree. That is a miracle. That is not coincidence. That is our technology driving us to a point where we really, really, really need to appreciate the created world. We have no business destroying. We have every right, every business to use it. We have no business destroying it. So I'm going to leave it at that. That's who I am. So there's a couple other things, like what's in a name. So my name is Peter Joseph Bauman, and I think either my parents knew something or they were inspired because I literally looked to St. Peter and St. Joseph. I feel a lot like St. Peter. Doubt, failure, always being called on, but really fumbling the ball quite a bit. And then I have this picture that Bridget gave me of St. Joseph, which I really, really love. Just take a look at this picture. He's tired, he's wore out, he's a dad. And, one day he's just like, hey honey, I had a dream, let's go to Egypt. Think of the reality of this. Think of the reality of the life that this man lived. And I think that whoever painted this, I don't even know, but I think it's, I think it speaks deeply to fatherhood. And I think my dad could attest to that. So, moving on. Sunrise and sunset from a tree stand is a miracle. And if you've never taken time to slow down and watch the sunrise or see the sunset, do it, because it'll remind you of all the good things in life. Okay. This is a rattlesnake. And I met this snake a couple weeks ago, and it reminded me of something very, very true. And that's that my guardian angel absolutely kicks ass. So I've always thought that ever since I was a little kid. I have done the stupidest things, really very dumb things, most of my life. Some by choice, some by accident, but I've always been a very active person and not always the smartest decisions. And I can't go down the laundry list, but I've been treed by buffalo, fighting bulls. I've been run down by a buffalo herd. I've jumped into a buffalo pen only to blow my knee out at the time one's charging me. Stupid things, and come out scot-free. I've stepped over at least 4 rattlesnakes in my life. This one was just a couple weeks ago with Connor and Charlie. We were hunting, and we were out by white owl, and and I've been training the boys for years to be quiet when we're hunting, and I'm walking along, and everything's good, and all of a sudden Charlie's like, "Holy crap, Dad!" I'm like, "Okay, there goes the deer." I turn around, he's like, "You just stepped over that," and that was that. And so that was like the 4th one in my life, never been struck. And so guardian angels are super important. And most people have this view of guardian angels. You know what I mean? Our guardian angels are real. They have to be real. They have to be. And I'm not sure that this is very accurate. I'm thinking more like this. Like, you know, in the battle all the time. And, you know, speaking of guardian angels, so Bridget and I talked about this a little bit. I think it was Amber, maybe that was the first person that ever said, you know, you should pray. I think we were talking about our confirmation class, about praying to know your guardian angel's name a couple years ago. I'm like, that's a really cool idea. So I've been praying for off and on to, you know, have my guardian angel's name revealed to me. Bridget was lucky enough to have, that's her story. I'm not going to disclose what her guardian angel's name is, but that's her story. But I've been praying. Well, after the rattlesnake incident, I was telling the boys we're walking around, the only thing that came to mind was Viper. I think my guardian angel's name is Viper. So anyway, just me and Viper in God's army. All right. So before I go any further, I do want to, so this is a talk that's actually going to center around women in my life. But I do want to acknowledge two men. And then one is my dad. This is my dad when he was just slightly younger, over here. But I have all these notes, and just suffice it to say that I think I'm busy, but my dad farmed, held a full-time job, drove, you know, got up most days around 4 in the morning, drove to Minneapolis, full-time job at a creamery, worked a ton of overtime, ran the farm, built buildings, tore down buildings, rented land, you know, and did most of the grocery shopping, clothes shopping even, and I'm like, I don't know how he did it, because Bridget, if I didn't have Bridget doing many, many things for our family, there's no way I could do that. And I have 20 acres and like 6 cows that I kill every fall, because I don't want them there in the winter. So anyway, it's pretty amazing. So, you know, what the men in my life have displayed. The other is my father-in-law. He too, you know, at a later point in life, mentor, guide, taught me really everything, you know, on hunting, fishing, whatever that might be. But also a genuinely great human being, and you know, had to help manage a family with a special needs child, which is in itself is a task. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later. But that's all the time I can spend on the guys. And that would be an entire talk in and of itself. So I'm going to spend time talking about some of these women, and the first is my mom. Now, this is intentional. You can't see her very well, but this was her life. Always just slightly out of the limelight. This is mom with all 7 of us kids. And my mom was very simple, but not simplistic. I could talk all day on my mom, and you're probably going to hear me talk more than I should, but when you look back over your shoulder, you know, I'll be 46 here in a couple days actually. I wish I would have known then what I know now. A life of a simple dedication to family and important things. My mom, her home, let's start with that. Most women I know have very nicely decorated homes. Our home wasn't necessary. It was clean, it was functional, but it wasn't decorated. I mean, we only had a few things hanging on the walls. Crucifixes, the Last Supper, if I remember right, a picture of the Agony in the garden in our living room. And then a little bit later on, Dad got a aerial photo of our farm that a photographer took. Other than that, I don't remember much of anything decorating our home. And I never really dwelt on it. I just would go to other people's houses and you would see decorations, and you'd go to our house and you wouldn't. And it never really was a big thing, but I kind of always wondered about it. Looking back, it was just simplicity. She was so simple. I got to share this. Again, I want to say simple, but not simplistic. My dad went to pick my mom up on their very first date, and I think it was the day, right, Dad? You got this car and your first date with Mom were the same day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think this isn't actually my dad's. I wish it was, but it's not. But it was. I mean, this is a 64 Ford Galaxy that he went and picked my mom up with the first date. She didn't even notice. She's just like, whatever. And my dad still tells that story, you know, and like, and that just describes her though. She focused on the things that were really, really important. She was struck with breast cancer when she was in her mid 40s, late 40s, I guess. And this is where this whole story gets tough. Mom was always there. She always did her thing. Cooking, cleaning, clothes. She helped put up hay. She weighed like 120 pounds. You never really recognized that she always was just there doing things. And she had a house full of distracted kids. We had our own expectations. When she got breast cancer, that really never changed. At least in my memory, it didn't change. It never became a really big thing in our house. Now, it is a big thing. Mom underwent a mastectomy, radiation, chemotherapy, drugs. But our life at home really didn't change that much. Now, I'm certain her and my dad had their quiet time, but you know, mastectomy, the social stigma, the pain, all of that, I know it bothered her, but she wore it well. And things for her at home never really changed. She still did chores. I don't even really remember her breast cancer impacting our life that much. And that's kind of sad. And I don't know if it was by design or if it's because I was 17 and had other things going on. Certainly I cared, but I don't know that I knew. Today I know a lot more than I did then. After 20 years of being cancer-free, though, she was on her drugs and she experienced hot flashes and things that go along with that. She also was struck with diabetes. And then she got shingles. And she battled shingles for couple years for sure, maybe longer. It's kind of hard to put this together. But she just always was strong and resilient and never really made it about her. And I know she had her times. And those are miracles, right? But I was trying to think of the miracles surrounding that first bout of cancer that she had. And one of the big ones was, you know, I go back to my dad. The day my dad found out that my mom had breast cancer, he threw his Copenhagen away after chewing forever, always, and never had another dip. And my dad was one of those guys that had chewing. I mean, if it wasn't church and it wasn't a meal and he wasn't sleeping, he was chewing, right? And I'm going to share this, I probably shouldn't, but I thought my dad was really sick when I was a little kid. Because I'd go in the bathroom after him and I'd look in the toilet, I'm like, oh, like, what's wrong with Dad's stomach? Well, he just spit his chew out, but you can imagine, you put the pieces together. And I'm like, I wonder what's going on with Dad, you know, he's fine. Anyway, but that's a miracle. I mean, to quit cold turkey. Just say, okay, you know, my wife is sick, I'm done. That takes something. That's enough for Mom. I'm going to come back to Mom. I'm going to kind of do brief introductions. The next one is Bridget. This is the night I met Bridget. And Bridget was a saving grace in my life. You know, you think of, like I told you, Delano is the center of the world. So my friends from Delano were having a party in Minneapolis. Bridget grew up in Watertown, South Dakota, had some friends that knew my friends from Delano, and that's where I met Bridget. And we ended up only living a few blocks from each other at SDSU. So yes, Delano is the center of the world. Anyway, you know, Viper must have been getting tired. Viper, you remember Viper? I needed some help. And so I met Bridget at a time when, you know, I was a good college student, but I was partying a little bit and playing rugby and, you know, at that age where it was time to like maybe stop doing stupid things. And then I met Bridget, and it was very easy to stop doing stupid things, and I really appreciate that. And she's really the center of everything I'm sharing with you tonight. You know, behind all of this is her. And the real miracle in this, well, first of all, kids, that's Rip Beer, just so you know. Just because we don't want to set the stage here. But she also, like my dad picked my mom up in that red convertible. I picked Bridget up in this. Right? Like, I'm sorry, I kind of use curse words sometimes, I shouldn't, but this window is open, all right? We're ice fishing. Why do you need an open window when you're ice fishing? Because that's the only way you can get in that car. So, And she did. She had to crawl over like in the passenger side. It was pretty funny. So anyway, and then I wore white jeans, which she can tell you about. But I think that was when I met her parents. Anyway, yeah. Craig and I are wearing the same shirt tonight. We compared notes. I haven't bought my own clothes since I met Bridget, so I'm fine. I don't like to shop, and I'm happy. Anyway, she stuck with me though, and I had career aspirations. I really wanted to be a big game biologist, and so I was gone a lot in our early years together. A full summer, one full summer, and then a couple years in the Black Hills chasing elk around. And we made it through that, and that was good. But she persevered and stuck with me, and she still sticks with me. But this is where things get just slightly awkward. Okay, so I fell in love with Bridget, but I met another girl like right at the same time, and she was 12, and I was 22, and people said it couldn't work. And it was kind of weird, and it sounds kind of weird. I look at your faces, and you're like, oh, what kind of sicko are you? But it's her. It's Bridget's little sister, Lindsay. So I met Lindsay the night I met Bridget's parents, and it was a game changer. I don't even know how to describe it, but Lindsay was my special buddy. She was everybody's special buddy, but I was her like project. I think that's probably the best way to say it. Like I was her PD, and she would come up with different things, and she would have rules for me, like I couldn't chew gum. I was her boyfriend, but if I was chewing gum, there was hell to pay. And if you didn't know Lindsay, and if you didn't know Bridget, and you didn't know Donna Marlene Bowles, you really missed out on something special. But Lindsay was a special needs child with Down syndrome. And her story is so complex. I can't even begin to share it all, but Down's didn't create all her problems. She had some medical issues, some medicine issues, and so she lost her hearing, and by losing her hearing, lose her sense of speech when she was very young. So Lindsay they learned their own sign language as a family. Bridget understands sign language, but they had their language all their own. I knew nothing of special needs people before I met Lindsay and Bridget. And even further, I had never had to care for anybody in my entire life. Not really care. I mean, take care of kind of care. And when I met Lindsay and I met Bridget, it was expected and it was allowed, maybe is a better word. As soon as Bridget and I, realized that this was serious, her parents, her family trusted me, trained me, and trusted me to take care of their most special little girl. And it was something I had never, ever, ever been exposed to in my life before, even with my mom. Never had to really care for somebody. So Lindsay was 100% pure love. She was your best friend until you gave her a reason not to be. And when you gave her a reason not to be, in her own special language, which come out, I don't even want to reproduce, but she would chew your ass in not using words. And it was so funny when she did that to people, because she would call anybody to the carpet. Like, it didn't matter. She didn't care what someone's status was. She really didn't know. It didn't matter. If you wronged her, you're going to pay. So it was really pretty good. So anyway, Lindsay's life was full of dancing and hugs and kisses and everything. So you can't speak about Lindsay without speaking about Marlene. Now this is the fourth woman. So we've got Lindsay, my mom, Bridget, and Marlene. Marlene is Bridget's mom. Lifelong caregiver, lifelong nurse. Most of you probably know her. Most of you, I think she basically had like 25 solo home runs on babies as an OB nurse when the doctors weren't there. I mean, she caught a lot of kids on her own. Some of you probably have children that were, at least she was in the room for sure. She inspired Bridget to be an OB nurse. And she was very patient with me. She helped train me. She helped me understand the world of medicine as only like a future mother-in-law could. Not pushy, but just very, you need to know this, and I did my best to learn. So we went into a period of very fun, blissful, kind of very busy times. Bridget and I got engaged. Lindsay allowed us to get married. which was nice. And it was all good for quite a long time. But then Lindsay got sick. She had always had battles. I mean, Bridget and her family spent months and years in her early life down in Minneapolis at Children's Hospital and other medical facilities. So it was nothing new to them. But about 2002, she got sick. And that was kind of the beginning of a pretty big downhill slide for her. And when you're going through family sickness, it seems like it takes forever. When you look back, and what seemed like 10 years might have only been 2, and for Lindsay it was about 3-ish, but it was intense. Bridget basically and Marlene, when Lindsay got sick, moved to Minneapolis more or less, living at the Ronald McDonald House. It was very challenging, but it was mostly challenging. In my mind, it was the most challenging for Bridget. Where Marlene and Donnie were parents, I was the brother-in-law. She had brothers and sisters, but Bridget was wife, mother, sister, daughter, caregiver, consultant, and also trying to be an employee and a homemaker. She had to do everything. And she was there a lot. And so it was trying times. We had Jake at that time. He's the bearded one in the back now. He's no longer a little boy. But then we got pregnant with Connor while all this was going on in the traveling. And, Bridget was under a lot of stress in those days, and we were very, very sure, very convinced. Tests showed that likely we lost the baby. And that was hard. And we went to the doctor kind of more or less to confirm things. And surprise of surprises, we had a heartbeat and things were okay. And we didn't lose Connor. And Bridget had to take a little bit different care of herself, but we didn't lose that baby. But my heart, my heart to any of you that have ever lost a child, wow, that's tough. But we may have, we don't know. Connor may have been a twin. We were set up for being twins, for having twins. Bridget's dad is a twin, my mom was a twin. The generational thing. We probably had a twin, maybe, we don't know. But something caused these tests to show that we lost a child. So anyway, suffice it to say, it was stressful. But the boys also provided this incredible outlet for going through this stressful time with Lindsay and the travel, and they were just great. Connor was the perfect baby. He's not anymore at all. Not a baby or perfect. But he was a great traveler, and he was the baby that Bridget needed at that time, and that is a miracle. Not fussy, just rolled with the punches. As long as he had a nookie, those little sucky things, fine. That's a present to you. That kid used to hide these things. Like, he'd have these little zip-up jammies. You'd take them away from him, and he'd have another one. He stuffed them. He had like a dozen. I mean, he just had a supply. He was good. Anyway, so we had the right set of circumstances to get through a very hard time. And I think of the miracles. Don grew up on a farm. Donnie wanted a farm. That's Bridget's dad. It didn't work out. And I wonder, had it worked out, could they have farmed and had Lindsay? Would that have worked with the amount of dedication that both things take? So maybe in some crazy way, they weren't supposed to farm because they were supposed to have Lindsay. I don't know. The other miracle surrounding that was that, Jake was 4 years old, 5 years old, 4 or so. And I saw in my son something that I was so proud of him from the time he was a little boy, was that he was exposed to these kids living in the Ronald McDonald House, living in these areas that had all kinds of problems. And they had tons of, and he learned to accept those things, tolerate those things, acknowledge those things, and defend those things, even as a little boy. And that's something pretty special that most kids in Watertown don't get exposed to. Lindsay got really sick by the summer of 2004. And one August morning, I remember I was going over to the hospital, and I stopped to pray in the park. It's probably the most guilty prayer I've ever had in my life. Looking back on it, maybe I'm being too hard on myself, but I prayed that morning that if it God's will, that He'd take Lindsay and end her suffering. And that's a hard prayer to pray, because I meant it. I didn't want to see her go. Nobody wanted to see her go. You know, you work so hard to keep someone healthy. You don't want to accept that there's some other end other than health. So it was a hard prayer to pray, but she was very much in pain and suffering and very sick. And so after that prayer, I went up to her hospital room. And I don't know if I have all these details right anymore, but I believe her dad was up there. He had done the night shift. And when I got there was just kind of chaos. And she was signing things, and she was just restless and just irritable, and also just kind of hard to understand. Sorry. And we couldn't really make any sense out of it. And I think it was later that Bridget showed up, in the morning, and also tried to understand, whether I'm getting all this right, the bottom line is the entire family was trying to understand what she was communicating to us, or what she was trying to communicate to us. And she was frustrated. And it was hard to know. And it wasn't very long after that Lindsay passed away, within a day or two. But very, very shortly after that. So I had this guilt. I prayed this prayer, and I shared that prayer with Bridget, and I told her I felt bad. She assured me it was okay. But on the ride home, Bridget was flipping through Lindsay's sign language book, and she found something that was just pretty amazing. What Lindsay was doing that day, that morning, that was leading up to her death, she was signing. She was signing, and she was pointing. She was pointing at the wall. She was signing angels. Now, they had never seen her use this sign before. They didn't, certainly Lindsay was exposed to angels or symbols and stuff, but this sign, this language, they had never shared that before. And that's what she was doing. And Bridget saw this in the book, and it was just and it all started to make sense. How she acted, what she was trying to communicate, what she was trying to show us. Can you imagine not being able to convey something, and you got your whole family, and you're you can't even tell them what you're saying? And that was Lindsay, but that was a miracle, which gives you a really sense of peace with her loss. So, why was Lindsay put on earth? Was she put here just to suffer? Was there a point to her life? Was she a gift? It's something to very much contemplate. She didn't know Christ probably like we know Christ, in the sense that the depth of the knowledge. But why was Lindsay put on earth? And so we're gonna circle back to that. After Lindsay's death, life moved on for a time, and things were different. But you get into normalcy. We had two fun little boys, and we needed to get out in the country and get these guys some space, and they were a great distraction. And so shortly after Lindsay's death, a few months, Bridget and I bought our place in the country, which we had wanted for quite a long time. And then we had Charlie. Charlie was not the same kind of baby as Connor. Everything that Connor did well, Charlie just decided he was going to be polar opposite. Cranky. Right, Charlie? Yeah. So we got that baby next, and but it was a time that we could handle it. Then Avery, life kind of just moved along. Avery was born in 2010, and at this time, Bridget's mother, Marlene, was very healthy, more or less. And I remember, so when your mother-in-law is an OB nurse and your wife is an OB nurse, and you try to go have a baby in any kind of privacy in Watertown, it just doesn't happen. Every birth was just a wrestling match with these women. And so this one, when Avery was born, there's a dozen nurses in there, and I'm getting shouldered and beat around and stuff like that and pushed out of the way. And then her mom does a quarterback sneak, right as Avery's being born, her mom just kind of jets in there. And all of a sudden she's like, "It's a girl!" She comes up, spikes Avery on the floor, they all do their dance, and the whole place celebrates. And Marlene was just that, she's just that kind of grandma. But then she got sick. And the better part of the last 8-10 years, something like that. So after a very short reprieve from losing her own daughter, she started having health issues. Started with thyroid cancer, again, that cancer word, and then just kind of manifested itself in a whole bunch of autoimmune issues. I couldn't even give you the list, but let's just suffice it to say surgeries, shoulder, hip, wrists, elbow, a lot, ankles, feet. And so it's very hard for someone like Marlene to be the primary caregiver and now having to be the primary care recipient. Also hard was for Bridget, who also got no reprieve, a short reprieve, and then all of a sudden again she's back into that role of providing and trying to have a family and husband and children and all these things. And so Bridget too has had to deal with that. And so Don and Marlene's trips, those are my in-laws, to Minneapolis for Lindsay became a series, and it still continued to be a series of trips to Mayo Clinic. And it never really has changed. They go, and it seems like once a month at least on average. And so Marlene needs your prayers as well. She could not be here tonight just because of her issues. She's doing okay, relatively speaking now, but she's more or less housebound. So shortly after Marlene started having issues, this is a picture of this is Marlene. This is, I don't remember what birthday this was, but then my own mother came back full circle. She loved life. She loved being a grandma. She loved being on the farm. She loved being home. But it was about 2012. I was happy in my job. Things were going pretty well overall. SDSU was trying to recruit me to come to work for them. I didn't really have much interest in it. This is about 2011, I guess. And then one day, and I believe if I'm getting this more or less correct, but I was at a work trip retreat, and Ellen called me. It's my sister Ellen in the back. And she said Mom had gone to the hospital, or had gone to the doctor, and their family doctor she was having some pain and some issues, and he had diagnosed it as just kind of an active hemorrhoid. And I could tell by the tone of my sister's voice, and she could tell by the hesitation in my voice, just kind of knew, like, that just doesn't quite sound right. Her cancer history and stuff. So we encouraged my folks to seek a second opinion. And our worst fears were confirmed, which started an intense battle with colorectal cancer. She was 68, I think, or so at the time, something very close to that. So, in short order, it wasn't very long before she had to have a colostomy, or her colon removed in a colostomy bag. So now you've got this woman that's gone through a mastectomy already, and now a colostomy. And that was just the outward appearance. The real threat was the cancer. But she had to also deal with those social issues. My dad was an absolute champion and cared for my mom, but as many of you understand, you quickly are out of your league when it comes to caring for someone that's that much in need. My sister Ellen and I, along with Bridget, really became my parents' primary consultants, and they too began trips to Mayo Clinic, a lot of them. Now here's where things come full circle. My dad has always been very close to his nephew Joe. They're about the same age. My cousin Joe had a very intense job with the American Dairy Association for a lot of years, very stressful job. He gave all that up, quit that, and he lived near Rochester. And before all of this stuff with Mom, he had changed careers to medical supplies. And he just enjoyed it. He just loved it. And I always thought that was odd. Here's a farm guy, a dairy guy through and through, and he's just messing around with medical supplies. I always thought it was an odd career change, right? Well, here's where it comes full circle. My cousin Joe is in Rochester, where my mom and dad have to go, and they've got a strong shoulder place to stay, someone that can help them with their medical supplies. The irony of that just is not lost on me, and it shouldn't be lost on you either. Wheelchairs and everything else came through Joe, and I got to spend time in this basement by the fireplace when my mom was going through these surgeries, listening to the wisdom of Joe, and it was quite a blessing. Here's Joe with my sons putting together electric chair for my mom and making them understand why grandma needs this without it being scary. That's a pretty profound thing. Mom's cancer was one for the books, though. When she had, my mom, you have to understand this, she was small, like 100 some pounds small. When she had breast cancer, she took radiation and chemo, and it had no effect on her physically. To say, I mean, it got a little sick, but she didn't lose her hair, and it really didn't make her that sick. In fact, her hair got more raven black and thicker, which doesn't usually happen. When she got this colon cancer, they were in uncharted territories at Mayo. Her cancer was rare, and it was aggressive, and it was nasty. And at one point, the doctor commented in one of our consultations, he said, "I'm not saying this rhetorically." He's like, "We are literally giving your mother drugs that would kill a horse." Like that. And it's not doing anything to her. But it also wasn't doing anything to her cancer. And so they, like I said, they were kind of in uncharted territories. And there was a time of some slight remission, and she started developing some pain in her knee. And went back to the doctor, and cancer had spread into her knee and throughout the rest of her body. And the only way to contain it was to amputate her leg, her knee, or her leg below the knee. So now she's had a vasectomy, colonoscopy, or colostomy, and now she's got to have an amputation. So her life was very challenging. She's also managing this all through diabetes and everything else. That she didn't really ever truly understand how to manage her diabetes very well. So it was just challenging. That was probably the one that bothered her the most. How do you hide an amputated leg? You know, she was absolutely convinced she was going to walk again, and with a walker she did, with a scooter. But she was not going to let things keep her down. She loved life so much, and she loved being part of life so much, that she just never really accepted that this was going to beat her. And I think because of that, she lived quite a long time compared to what most people might have. The next thing is pretty hard to speak about. I'm not trying to be overly graphic here, but it's important for you to understand that the type of cancer that my mom suffered was different. It manifested itself not so much in tumors internally, which it did, but also externally, and attacked the largest organ of her body, which was her skin. So I don't want to be too graphic, it's hard, but if you can imagine maybe leprosy, sores, open sores everywhere, that's what she had to deal with. She probably wished she had shingles back, as sensitive as she was to touch. I had decided to take this job with SDSU at that time. We were finishing an addition on our house, and things were tough at home. Mom was obviously going to have to go on hospice. Ellen had done something truly amazing at our home with being a primary helper of our family. We grew up in a very chaotic, busy, loud farmhouse, right? With an iron fist, but not for very long before people understood what she was trying to do. My sister created this quiet, tranquil, peaceful place for my mom to transition, and it was amazing. This farmhouse that had just been chaotic was just quiet and peaceful, and it was a good thing. But knowing this, I knew that I needed to move and go there. My brother was living at the farm at the time, but they had a couple little kids. They just weren't in a great place to help. I felt very called to be there, and Bridget totally understood. I called my boss and I said, I had a brand new job. And I said, I have no vacation, I got no sick leave, I got nothing, but I'm going to be gone. And she said, okay, I guess we'll see you when you get back. Which I was very grateful for. So for the next couple of weeks, I was able to have the honor of caring for my dying mom. Her wounds were extremely intense, and I'm just going to have to read this because it's just really hard to talk about. My dad is an extremely strong individual, but he couldn't do it. He just simply couldn't do what she needed to be done in the way that she needed to be done, that it needed to be done. Now I got to back up a second. My mom fell in love with Bridget the minute she met her, as she has with all of her in-laws children. So she knew Bridget was, at that time we were like juniors in college, but she was going to be a nurse, right? So my mom was very simple. She's like, okay, you're going to be a nurse, you must know medical things. And from that moment on, every single medical decision that my mom had to face, she'd run through Bridget. I mean, Bridget was studying to be an OB nurse, and she'd ask her all these other things, and we're just like, I don't know. I'm like, just lie, it's fine. Just make her happy. But it was because of that relationship that my parents had with Bridget that Bridget ensured them that what I was going to come home and do could be done. And that was for the last couple of weeks of my mom's life. I moved her. I had to ask my dad as respectfully as I could to step aside and let me do this, because there's the only way you could do it. So I cradled my mom in my arms like a child, and I moved her from her chair to her bed to her bath, and I was the only one that really could do it. How come I could do it? How did I know? Because of the time I got to spend with Lindsay. And that whole period of my life, short as it was with Lindsay, trained me how to care for someone. My brothers didn't know this. Nobody else in that house really knew how to do this. And we made the best of it for the last couple of weeks. It was very humbling. Something I will always cherish, but I never wish to repeat. So I'm just going to show, this is me and my mom and my siblings toward the end. And it was something very blessed. There was a lot of miracles that surrounded my mom. This one is super cool. Kurt, this one's for you. So I'm a wildlife biologist by training, and we live on a farm, and life and death are part of life. And animals typically, some of the larger animals can do this, typically cannot live without a leg. Now, when my mom was sick and she had her leg amputated, a one-legged grackle showed up in the yard. And it was just around with all the other grackles, but it would sit on the windowsill in the living room where my mom was going through hospice. And I don't remember if it was the same side or that my mom was missing her leg on or not. But a one-legged grackle is not something that survives. They just don't, Birds don't survive with one leg. It's just not something that's typical. So anyway, this bird, and I had heard about this bird, and my dad had seen the bird, and he had told me about the bird, and other people had seen the bird. And I was there for 2 weeks. I had never seen the bird. I'd go outside, I'd get something, I'd come back in the house, and like, hey, you just missed the bird. And I'm like, I never saw it. And I didn't need to see it to believe it. I just wanted to see it because I wanted to experience it. Well, the day before my mom's death, we had a lot of family members over, and people were visiting, and we had people kind of knew this last, getting on. I gotta keep it down here. So, anyway, mom's on her last leg here, and I finally see the bird. It's sitting on the windowsill, and I was like, "Hey guys, there's the bird!" And it was a one-legged grackle, and it was around, and it sat there for a while, and then went out in the yard and started picking around and feeding like it normally did. And it's just amazing. Just the whole part of it is amazing. Also, the night before my mom died, I went to church, up the little country church up the road from our farm. And I was going to communion. And this is the first, probably, personal miracle I've ever really experienced. And I went to communion, and I received the Eucharist, and I took the precious blood, and I about spit it out right there on the floor. And why? Because it tasted like blood. Absolutely 100% like blood. If you're a hunter or you ever tasted blood, or if you're a runner, you know how you get that when your lungs just feel like they're going to explode, you've got that bloody, it was that taste. And it was shocking, I guess is probably the best way I could say it. And I went back and remember going back to the pew and just sitting there like, just trying to take that in. So I'm not sure I fully really can process that. But, so that's, so there's these miracles. There's the bird, and then there's the precious blood. And then my sisters witnessed, I didn't get to see this as much, but my mom, the day before she really went kind of into, she hadn't quite passed away, but she was not necessarily cognizant in that last hours. But that day she was, the people were in the house and there was a lot of people around, and she kept saying, "Who's here? Who's here?" She kept pointing at the door that we never use. Who's here? And it's kind of like that story of Jesus where he's surrounded by the crowd and he's like, "Who touched me?" Right? And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean, who's here? There's a ton of people here." But she kept saying that, and then my sisters kind of witnessed this conversation that she had with what they believed was the Blessed Virgin. And it's the only thing that makes sense, because it was something very profound that happened in that living room that day that only that's their story, they witnessed it, but I believe it. So there's a lot of miracles. Mom brought those miracles out, but that's not where her story ended. She passed away, I think it was a Sunday, and when the hearse left, there was this void, but also this odd coming together. And I'm going to show you something that you're not going to understand very well. This is what we did after my mom's death. We went out, we started a fire, we grilled hot dogs, we had beers, and we celebrated her life. Right there, a few hours after she was gone, on the farm, together as a family. And it was incredible. My brother has a friend that's got an airplane, and we saw this airplane flying around, and he's like, "I wonder if that's my buddy Cal." So he gets on the cell phone, he calls this guy. He's like, "Is that you flying around?" I said, "Yeah." And Luke, my brother Luke, told him what had gone on, and he expressed his condolences, and that was the end of it. About 20 minutes later, he comes back with smoke and puts on an air show for the kids over the farm on the day my mom passed away. And it was something that we will always cherish. And those things just don't happen. I would bet that none of you has a story where someone passed away and then you got an air show for free. So, but anyway, it was just that. My dad was really hurting, of course, and this is my dad's miracle. But I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to show you. But my sister caught this photo of my parents, very, very close to my mother's death. My dad was hurting. My dad received his miracle some weeks later when my mom visited him and told him everything was going to be okay. The other miracle I attribute to my mom is this guy. This is my brother-in-law, Mike. Mike shot his first deer after 40 years of hunting, his first buck ever, about 2 days ago. That is not the miracle. He's an incredible man. The miracle here is that Mike, their photography studio was kind of going through some tough times, and Mike took a job about 6 or 7 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, up in the oil fields in North Dakota when things were going good. And it wasn't good for his family. It was very stressful. He was home visiting, and he got in a car wreck, got hit by a drunk driver, and almost got killed in this little tin can of a Ford Fiesta or whatever he was driving. Mike about died that day. Him and my mom had a really special connection. Her suffering, her prayers, her empathy for him was amazing. And probably by that grace, that man is still alive today, taking care of his 6 kids. His leg doesn't work. Ironically, she had her leg amputated. His leg doesn't work from the knee down. He has to wear a boot every single day. But he drove this deer out of the woods himself, and that's a testament to life. And he's an amazing man. And I believe that he's still here because of my mom. So I'm going to wrap up here. It's just miracles are everywhere. After losing my mom, what's going on there? You know, life kind of came back around full circle. Oh, one battery. And this guy came into our lives, Father Paul. You guys, a few of you know him. And he's really had a blessing for our family, blessing for me, blessing for Bridget. Bridget's faith, after my mom passed away, Bridget's faith just absolutely exploded in ways that I can't. She became my rock for faith and still is. She had her own troubles and trials and health issues, and she had to give up her job at the hospital because she simply couldn't do it anymore. And so Bridget's always had these challenges, and what's the blessing in that? Now she serves our parish in a role that we never had before, taking care of widows, natural family planning, things that are just amazing. It's things I never would have saw coming. Father Paul also ushered in this group of people. This is our men's group, Friday morning men's group. These are some amazing men in my life. Many of these guys texted me, called me, jabbed me about this talk. Mostly support, prayers of support, and I'm grateful. So, I don't know if these things are as profound as I think they are, but I think that they truly are signs of the real power of Christ in our life. I'm going to end here with this. 20 years of marriage to this woman, and 21 now. But we took a trip to the Black Hills. Oh wait, I have to tell you one more thing. Miracles. Okay, so I have to tell you this real quick before I wrap. So I showed you my dad's car, right? So my godfather, his brother, they bought cars together, very, very close. This was a Mercury Comet. I didn't know this car existed until like a year and a half ago. Had no idea that this was my godfather's car, that it even still was around. I just didn't even know the story. And through a series of events, I now own this car for $100 from my cousin. And I'm like, what am I gonna do with it, right? And the only thing that's been on my heart for like the last year is somehow this car has to get restored to bring joy to people that are suffering with cancer or sick kids, just to go for a ride. I don't even know how to do it. I don't know. I've tried a few things. I have no idea. I don't know. Maybe this is the next IC Parish project. We don't need another record. We need to restore a car. Father Fox, where you at? Park your bike for a while and work on this. Anyway, so our 20th anniversary we celebrated in the Black Hills, and we went to a mass that day, and we got a marriage blessing, which was really cool. A few weeks ago, a couple months ago actually, I was back in the Black Hills. I didn't feel like going to the casino or whatever the night before. Got up early, went to mass, and it was the same priest, and he remembered me. We talked, and I got a chance to go to confession, and it was really cool. And he remembered us, and it was one of the greatest things that he ever told me that I've ever heard in confession. He said, "Why wouldn't the devil attack you as a father and a husband? Why wouldn't he?" He's like, and this guy's like older than dirt. He's like almost 90. And so his perspective is pretty real. And I said, well, I guess it makes sense. He's like, absolutely, it makes sense. Why wouldn't they go for the foundation? Why wouldn't you go for the foundation? But he told me the coolest thing. He said, when you're feeling troubled, don't pray for yourself. Pray for someone else who you think Satan has their soul wrapped around his little finger. You pray a decade of the Divine Mercy Chaplet for that person. You can't really pray yourself out of the trouble, but you can pray for someone else. And he said, pretty soon, when you start chipping away at Satan's treasure trove of souls, and eventually he's going to leave you alone because he's losing numbers. So I guess that's it. I probably went on too long. I guess it's 7:30. I'm going to quit. Thanks. I hope there was something in this for all of you. Thank you.